There is a story we tell ourselves when we're afraid of uncertainty, afraid of failure, afraid of being seen. It's the story of control. The belief that if we can manipulate the world around us, shape it, twist it, hold it in our grip, we will be safe. For the narcissist, this belief isn't just a coping mechanism, it's the foundation of their identity. Control is their armor, their currency, their survival strategy. But here's the hard truth. Control is an illusion, and like all illusions, it eventually shatters. At first, control looks like power. The narcissist builds a carefully curated image, presenting themselves as confident, successful, and untouchable. They know how to say the right words, how to command attention, how to shape a narrative so that they always appear in the best light. They make people believe in them, admire them, even depend on them. To the outside world, they seem to have it all together. But what most people don't see is the exhausting effort it takes to keep that image intact. The constant calculation, the fear of exposure, the emotional acrobatics required to make sure they are always the one in control. Underneath it all, there's a deep unspoken fear. What if I'm not enough? What if without the image, without the performance, without the control, I am unlovable? This fear drives every manipulation, every lie, every desperate attempt to stay in power. But here's the paradox. The more a narcissist seeks control, the less they actually have. Because real power, true confidence, deep relationships, authentic success doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. And connection requires something that narcissists have spent a lifetime avoiding: vulnerability. When control is the goal, relationships become transactions. Love is not given freely, but measured, tested, and rationed based on what the other person can provide. Every interaction becomes a game of dominance. Who holds the upper hand? Who is winning? Who has the most influence? And because relationships are built on trust, and trust requires vulnerability, these relationships are inherently fragile. The moment someone stops playing along, the moment they see through the manipulation, the moment they set boundaries, the illusion cracks. The real tragedy of the illusion of control is that it isolates the narcissist. The very thing they fear, being alone, being unworthy, being unseen, becomes their reality. They push away the people who truly care about them because love, in its truest form, cannot be controlled. Love is messy. Love requires accountability. Love says, I see you, all of you, and I still choose to stay. But the narcissist doesn't trust that kind of love. They don't believe it exists. So they cling harder to control, and in doing so, they push away the very thing they need the most. And then comes the storm. Because life doesn't bend to our will forever. People walk away, careers collapse, the lies catch up, the mask slips, and when it does, the narcissist is left standing in the wreckage of their own making, wondering why nothing ever seems to go their way. But even in the aftermath, even in the loneliness, even in the breaking, there is an opportunity. Because when control fails, when the illusion fades, there's only one thing left: truth. And truth, though painful, is the first step toward healing. The question is, will they see it, or will they reach for control again, trying to rebuild the illusion, patch the cracks, and pretend nothing ever happened? Some will. Some will double down, refusing to face the storm, insisting that it's everyone else's fault. But for those who are willing to sit in the discomfort, to acknowledge the wreckage, to admit that control was never real in the first place, there is hope. There is another way. And maybe that's the real story. Not one of control, but of surrender, of finally laying down the armor, of choosing connection over manipulation, truth over image, love over power. It's a hard road, but it's the only road that leads to freedom. Because control might feel safe, but it's a cage. And real safety, real belonging only comes when we're brave enough to step outside of it. In the aftermath of every narcissist path, there's a common pattern: ruined friendships, fractured families, and relationships left in ashes. It's easy to assume that these endings are just a string of bad luck or misunderstandings, but when the pattern keeps repeating, it's no accident. The truth is, narcissists struggle to maintain deep, lasting connections because their relationships aren't built on love, trust, or mutual respect. They are built on control, validation, and self-preservation. And when a relationship is structured around one person's need for dominance, it isn't a matter of if it will break, but when. At the beginning of a relationship, whether it's romantic, platonic, or professional, a narcissist often appears charming, charismatic, and deeply invested. They know how to make someone feel seen and valued, at least on the surface. They mirror the other person's desires, reflect their dreams back to them, and say all the right things. It's intoxicating. It feels like being chosen, like being special. But what seems like genuine care is often a well-crafted performance designed to secure admiration, control, and loyalty. The moment the other person starts to show independence, set boundaries, or question the narcissist's behavior, the relationship begins to erode. For a narcissist, love is conditional. It exists only as long as the other person continues to serve a purpose, whether it's admiration, attention, or validation. The moment that dynamic shifts, love is withdrawn. The warmth that once felt so real turns cold. Affection is replaced with indifference or worse, cruelty. The person who was once idealized is now criticized, dismissed, or devalued. This cycle is known as idealization and devaluation, and it leaves the people in a narcissist's life feeling confused, broken, and questioning their own worth. The most painful part is that the people who love a narcissist often try everything to make the relationship work. They bend, they sacrifice, they walk on eggshells, hoping that if they love harder, if they give more, they can bring back the person they once knew. But the truth is, that version of the narcissist, the charming, attentive, loving one, was always temporary. The relationship was never a partnership. It was a power dynamic. And no amount of effort can sustain a connection where only one person is expected to compromise. Over time, this pattern leaves a wake of devastation. Friendships fade without explanation. Family ties are severed over conflicts that never truly get resolved. Romantic partners are left questioning what was real and what was manipulation. The narcissist rarely acknowledges their role in these endings. Instead, they rewrite the story, blaming the other person, painting themselves as the victim, and moving on as if the relationship never mattered. But deep down, beneath the bravado, there is a trail of regrets they will never admit to. What makes this even more tragic is that narcissists often find themselves alone even when they refuse to see it. They may have people around them, new friends, new partners, new colleagues, but these relationships are always superficial. The deeper, more meaningful connections, the ones built on vulnerability, accountability, and mutual respect, are nowhere to be found. Because real relationships require something a narcissist is unwilling to give: honesty. The ability to say, I was wrong, I hurt you, I need to change. Without that, the cycle continues and history repeats itself. There comes a moment when even the most loyal people walk away, not because they stopped caring, but because they finally realize they were pouring their love into a cup that would never be full. When that happens, the narcissist is left with nothing but ghosts of friendships that could have been, of love that was once freely given, of a family that tried to hold on but couldn't survive the storm. And while they may act as if they don't care, there are nights when the silence is deafening. The wake of broken relationships is more than just a consequence of narcissism. It's the cost of control, of manipulation, of avoiding vulnerability at all costs. And until a narcissist chooses to face that cost, to acknowledge the damage they've done, and to do the hard work of change, they will continue to live in the ruins of their own making. Because love can't be controlled. Trust can't be demanded. And true connection will never exist in a relationship where one person refuses to be real. Vulnerability is the currency of true connection. It is the willingness to be seen as we are, messy, imperfect, afraid, hopeful, longing for love and belonging. But for the narcissist, vulnerability is not a gift, it is a threat. To be vulnerable means to relinquish control, to admit that they too feel fear, shame, and insecurity. And for someone who has built their entire identity on being superior, infallible, and untouchable, that is simply not an option. So they avoid it, they bury it, they armor up. And in doing so, they pay a price that they don't even realize they are paying. The first cost of avoiding vulnerability is the inability to experience real intimacy. Relationships at their core thrive on trust and emotional honesty. But when vulnerability is avoided, relationships remain transactional, surface level, and ultimately unfulfilling. A narcissist may go through the motions of love, grand gestures, charm, intense passion, but without the ability to be real, their relationships lack depth. Their partner may feel loved one moment and discarded the next, never truly knowing where they stand. Love cannot grow where honesty is absent. And over time, people begin to see through the performance. Avoiding vulnerability also leads to an ever-present fear of exposure. The narcissist spends their life carefully curating an image of success, confidence, control, but beneath that image is an overwhelming sense of inadequacy they refuse to confront. They must constantly manage how others perceive them, ensuring that no cracks in their facade are revealed. This is exhausting. They cannot afford to be caught off guard, to let their guard down, to admit fault or weakness. And so they become hypervigilant, paranoid even, always on edge, always fearing the moment when someone will see through them. The effort it takes to maintain this illusion is relentless, leaving them emotionally drained and disconnected from their own truth. The inability to embrace vulnerability also means a lifetime of emotional isolation. While they may have people around them, they do not experience true companionship. They cannot allow themselves to be fully known, and so they exist in a world of half-truths and performances, never fully letting anyone in. Even in moments of sadness or despair, when they desperately need support, they refuse to reach out. To ask for help is to admit weakness, and weakness is unacceptable. And so they suffer alone, convincing themselves that they are self-sufficient, that they don't need anyone. But deep down, loneliness lingers like a shadow that never leaves. Another devastating cost of avoiding vulnerability is the inability to experience personal growth. Growth requires self-awareness, the ability to recognize flaws, mistakes, and shortcomings and work through them. But for the narcissist, admitting fault is unbearable. They would rather rewrite the story, shift the blame, or convince themselves that they are always right than face the uncomfortable truth of their own imperfection. This means that, despite their external achievements, internally they remain stagnant. They do not evolve. They do not learn from their failures. They repeat the same cycles, make the same mistakes, and wonder why they keep ending up in the same place. This avoidance also creates a pattern of destruction in their relationships, not just romantic ones, but friendships, family bonds, and professional partnerships. Vulnerability is what allows people to repair conflict, to make amends, to build deeper trust. Without it, every disagreement becomes a battle for control, every wound is left to fester, and every relationship eventually reaches a breaking point. They may convince themselves that others are the problem, that people are too sensitive or disloyal, but the truth is that their refusal to be vulnerable is what drives people away. No one can stay in a relationship where accountability and emotional honesty are absent. Perhaps the cruelest cost of all is the lack of true self-acceptance. At the heart of every narcissist's avoidance of vulnerability is shame. The deep, unspoken belief that if they were truly seen, they would not be loved. This is why they build the facade, why they control the narrative, why they push people away before they can be rejected. But in doing so, they rob themselves of the one thing they are truly searching for: unconditional acceptance. The irony is that vulnerability, the thing they fear most, is the only path to the love and belonging they crave. And so they remain trapped trapped behind their own walls, watching life happen at a distance, participating but never fully engaging, surrounded by people but always alone. The cost of avoiding vulnerability is not just broken relationships or a lack of connection, it is the loss of the life they could have had. A life where they could have been truly known, truly loved, and truly free. But to have that life, they would have to take off the armor, let down the walls, and face the terrifying, beautiful reality of being human. The question is, will they ever be willing to pay that price? For a narcissist, life is a carefully orchestrated performance. Every interaction, every relationship, every success is another piece of the mask they wear, one designed to convince the world, and often themselves, that they are strong, untouchable, and superior. This mask is not just a tool, it is a survival mechanism, a way to hide the deep-seated fear of inadequacy that lurks beneath. But the truth about masks is that they are exhausting to maintain. No matter how tightly they hold it in place, no matter how much effort they put into curating their image, the moment always comes when the mask slips. And when it does, the fallout is inevitable. At first, the cracks are small, barely noticeable to anyone but those closest to them. Maybe it's a moment of uncharacteristic rage when their authority is questioned. Maybe it's a lie that unravels too quickly, exposing inconsistencies they can't explain away. Maybe it's a moment of public embarrassment that shatters their carefully constructed image of perfection. Whatever it is, the slip is subtle, but for a narcissist, it feels like an earthquake because their entire identity is built on control. Control of how they are perceived, control of how others feel about them, control of the narrative. The moment they lose that, panic sets in. For those in a narcissist's inner circle, partners, friends, colleagues, the slipping of the mask is often a moment of clarity. For so long, they may have doubted their instincts, convinced themselves that they were overreacting, that maybe they were the problem. But when the mask slips, they see the truth. The person they thought they knew is not who they seemed to be. The charm, the confidence, the warmth, it was all conditional, all dependent on whether the narcissist was getting what they wanted. And when that illusion is shattered, it becomes impossible to unsee. This is where the narcissist fights back. They cannot afford to let the slip be seen as a failure, so they scramble to regain control. Some resort to gaslighting, making those around them question their own perceptions. You're imagining things, they say. I never said that. You're too sensitive. Others go on the attack, shifting blame, accusing others of betrayal, or fabricating a new narrative to explain away their mistakes. And if those tactics fail, they retreat into self-victimization, painting themselves as the ones who have been wronged. Anything to keep the focus off of the truth, that their carefully constructed persona is falling apart. But here's the thing about masks. Once people see behind them, they can never fully believe in the illusion again. The more the narcissist tries to patch the cracks, the more obvious they become. Friends who once overlooked red flags begin to distance themselves. Colleagues lose trust. Romantic partners who may have spent years trying to justify their behavior finally find the courage to walk away. The narcissist may insist that they don't care, that they are better off without those people anyway. But deep down, there is a gnawing realization that their world is shrinking, and they have no one to blame but themselves. As the mask continues to slip, a narcissist is faced with two choices: face the truth or build a new illusion. Some will try to start over, find new friends, new partners, a new job where no one knows their past. They will create a fresh version of themselves, hoping that this time the mask will hold. And for a while, it might, but the cycle always repeats because the issue is not the people around them. It is within them. Others may spiral into self-destruction, lashing out at those who have seen the truth, desperate to regain their power. This is when they become cruelest, when they inflict the most damage, because deep down, they are fighting a battle they know they cannot win. And then there are the rare few who, in the aftermath of the mask slipping, finally see themselves clearly. When they have lost everything, the admiration, the control, the relationships they once took for granted. Some narcissists reach a point where they are forced to ask the question they have avoided their entire lives. Who am I without this mask? This is the moment where real change is possible. Not through manipulation, not through another performance, but through the difficult, painful work of self-awareness, of accountability, of healing. But the path to transformation is long and difficult, and few are willing to take it. For most, the slipping of the mask is not a moment of awakening, but a moment of desperation. They double down, they find new people to manipulate, they tell themselves whatever they need to hear to avoid facing the truth. But no matter how many times they rebuild the illusion, no matter how many new masks they create, they will always live with the knowledge that, for even a moment, someone saw them for who they truly are. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than being truly seen. Change is a word that carries hope, but for a narcissist, it is also a word that carries fear. To change means to admit that something is broken, that something isn't working, that the world they have so carefully constructed is not as solid as they want it to be. And that is terrifying. Because to change, a narcissist must do the one thing they have spent their whole life avoiding. They must look inward. They must confront the parts of themselves they have denied, ignored, or blamed on others. And that kind of transformation is not for the faint of heart. For most narcissists, the opportunity for change does not come as a choice, but as a consequence. It happens when they have lost something they never expected to lose. Perhaps a partner who finally walked away, a friend who set firm boundaries, a career that crumbled under the weight of their own actions. It happens when they have burned so many bridges that for the first time they find themselves truly alone. This is the breaking point, the moment when they can no longer deny that the common denominator in their failed relationships is not the people who left, it is them. This moment of reckoning is painful. Without their usual sources of validation, without people to manipulate or control, a narcissist is forced to sit with themselves. And for someone who has spent their life avoiding vulnerability, this is unfamiliar territory. Shame begins to creep in. The same shame they have worked so hard to suppress. It whispers truths they do not want to hear. You are not who you pretend to be. You have hurt people. You are not invincible. And this is where they face their first choice. Will they listen? Will they sit with the discomfort, acknowledge their flaws, and begin the painful process of self-examination? Or will they run, finding new ways to distract themselves, new people to blame, new illusions to create? True change requires more than just recognizing mistakes. It requires accountability. And accountability is where many narcissists falter. It is one thing to acknowledge past behaviors. It is another to take responsibility for them. It means going back and facing the people they have hurt, not with excuses or justifications, but with real apologies and the willingness to listen. It means accepting that some relationships may never be repaired, that forgiveness is not owed to them, and that trust, if it is ever regained, will take time. This is the most difficult part of change because it demands humility, something a narcissist has spent their life rejecting. If a narcissist chooses to embrace this journey, they will also have to confront their deepest fear, vulnerability. They will have to let go of the mask they have worn for so long and learn how to engage with others in an authentic way. This means admitting when they are wrong, asking for help when they need it, and allowing themselves to be seen as imperfect. It means learning to receive love and validation, not through manipulation, but through genuine connection. And while this may sound simple for someone who has spent their life controlling every aspect of how they are perceived, it is one of the hardest things they will ever do. But if they can push through the discomfort, through the fear and the shame, real transformation is possible. They will begin to see relationships in a new way. not as a means to gain power or admiration, but as spaces where they can be fully known and fully accepted. They will learn that respect is not demanded through intimidation, but earned through kindness and consistency. They will experience, perhaps for the first time, what it feels like to love and be loved without condition. And this is where true healing begins. Of course, not all narcissists will take this path. Change is difficult, and the truth is, many will choose to stay the same because it is easier. They will return to their old ways, convincing themselves that they are fine as they are, that the people who left were weak, that they are better off alone. But for those who are willing to do the work, the opportunity for change is always there. It is in every broken relationship, every lost friendship, every moment of loneliness that makes them wonder, is it me? It is in every painful truth they finally allow themselves to hear. The opportunity for change is always knocking, but they must choose to open the door. In the end, the decision to change is not about proving anything to others. It is about reclaiming a life that has been built on illusions and finally stepping into something real. It is about choosing connection over control, growth over stagnation, and authenticity over performance. And while the road is long and difficult, for those who take it, the reward is profound. The chance to live a life where they no longer have to wear a mask, a life where they can finally be free.